Good day. This is Peter Ranzio with PD Programming, here to create a magic charm for Crash Magic. We're going to demonstrate today how to create two different types of calculated fields. The first one, which is a fairly common type, is when you want to aggregate several other fields, look at some values in other fields and create a single field to represent them. The second type is where we need to actually force a particular field in the database to look like a number, even though it's not. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to create our aggregated field. I'm looking here at a case ID list, and the case ID list shows that this particular database knows how many possible injuries, how many non-incapacitating, how many incapacitating, and how many fatality injuries there were. But I don't have a single column I can look at and just tell me what type of a crash this was, what the severity was. So I'd like to create one that shows the most serious severity for the crash and be able to display that in a column. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the admin side of the program. Admin privileges are required to create a calculated field. And in your admin side of the program, you'll find that there's a .config user and a .shared user in addition to the regular users of the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the calculated fields option. I'm going to open that up and find that I have a v-user-defined calculated field. You should have this, and if you don't, contact us so that we can create it, make sure it's incorporated into your configuration. All current configurations now get a v-user-defined. It's important you go into the shared user because you won't be able to make any changes in the .config. You won't have this green screen available. So the first thing I'm going to do in my v-user-defined is I'm going to click the plus sign and I'm going to add a new calculated field. Right now it's got just the name field name 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create it as something called T-severity. This goes along with the naming convention of the client that's using these particular calculated fields. Syntax is really not necessary in the calculated fields. That's sort of for the help system. And these are just fields, so they don't have any complex syntax. However, it is helpful to let somebody know who looks at this later what this field means. So for the description, I'm putting in most serious severity. Now the function that I'm going to create here, the value that I'm going to create, will be text. It's going to say either fatal or incapacitating or non-incapacitating, etc. So it'll just be a string type. That means it won't be a number or a boolean, a date or anything. It's just going to be a string, a piece of text. I don't need any parameters and there are no lookups because I'm actually creating it as text. So now I just need to create the expression. The expression I'm going to use, and these are most easy to do if you go to the field list or to go to a filter. Those are places you can work on creating expressions. You can also use this button over here for creating your expression, for editing it. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this, this charm. All we want to do is show you how to create a calculated field. The functions in here, like if, which is I believe the only one we're using, are described in the manual, in the help under filter functions. So here's what this expression says. It says if T fatalities, that was the last column, are greater than 0, we want to call it a fatal. That comma there means otherwise we're going to go to the next step. If incapacitated injuries are greater than 0, we make it incapacitating. Else, non-incapacitating injuries being greater than 0 results in non-incapacitating. Finally, else possible injuries are greater than 0, we call it POS. Now, interestingly, you can then have else, just like we did in all the others, PDO. So what we're doing there is we're saying, if you've got fatalities, we do this, incapacitating, we do this, so on. Otherwise, if none of those applied, return PDO. So we're assuming that a crash in the database that didn't have any of those injury types is just a property damage crash. So I'm going to click on the test button, and it will return back this expression parsed successfully, so we're good. If you get any error messages, read the error message. It usually should describe what's going wrong with what you typed in. It can also help to open up this editor here, which helps you build these expressions, lets you pick out the exact spellings of the functions that you need, and then when you save it, it'll also give you any errors there if you have any problems. So now I have a new field. You'll notice it's been named T-severity here. Right after I tested it, that changed. T-severity, which now will return one of those pieces of text. Let's go back and see how that worked. So we're back from admin and we're going to go over to our severity listing. And the severity listing now still has those same 4 columns, and I'm going to go edit that listing. So I'm going to choose the field list to edit. And the field list contains just those values along with the case ID. I'm going to go here because what this list shows me right now is all of my query fields. That's the stuff that was provided by you as a client for us to import. What we want here is our calculated fields, and there's a number of those in here. The one you're going to choose is V user defined. That's the one we just edited, and you'll see now you have T severity in there. So I'm going to drop over here so that it gets placed at the end of the list. There's your T severity. Now T severity is part of this listing. And now I don't really need these columns anymore because this column, or this row, shows me that I had no other types of injuries, so we're defaulting to PDO. That was that last else. In this case, I had possible injuries, but I didn't have any other types, so I came back with pos. Down here a ways, I've got a non-incapacitating, because I have one non-incapacitating. Over here I have incapacitating, because I had an incapacitating injury. Yeah, and that's my list. So all of those columns have been summarized into this column, which tells you the most severe severity in the crash. So that was our use number one. Now our second purpose for creating a calculated field could be to change the way a field is looked at. So I've got a field now in the database that is not numeric, and we wish it were. So I'm going to go to this collision diagram here. And what I've got is a field that's being brought in either as text or it's not being defined as its data type, and so I can't use it. So I'm going to go in here and I'll show you how I try to use it. So I've got a filter here. That's just a spare filter hanging around. And what I'm going to do is I found this column. Let's delete that. We'll just go find it in here. I've got this column called Calc Bicycle Count. And what I just want to do is very simple. I just want to say equals 1 or greater than 0, however I want to do it. When I click on Save, it tells me that I must compare like types. And that means, well, this is a number, this must not be a number. So this could be a string or it could be an undefined data type. So I have to do something to make that usable. So we're going to take that, we're going to make a numeric value out of it. So let's get out of here for a moment. And once again, we're going to go to the admin side of the program to the calculated fields. Very same place we went for the T severity field. So I'll go back to my V user defined calculated fields. And you see we still have the T severity. Now I'm going to add a new one. And I want to differentiate between this one and the one that we're actually querying. We had one that we looked at a moment ago called Calc Bicycle Count. I'm just adding the word num on the end to let us know this is the same field, but it's been forced into being a number. So once again, I'm not going to put anything in the syntax because it's just a simple variable, but I do want to describe it. And so I'm going to describe it as Calc Bicycle Count field forced as a number. And we don't want it to be a string, we want it to be a number, just like that. Well, any type of field that you want to convert to a number, you can say as number. And in the event that the value in that field can be turned into a number, it will. If it won't, you'll get an error for that field and it'll say we couldn't turn it into a number. But we're taking Calc Bicycle Count and we're converting it to number. As number is a built-in function in the program. You can find these built-in functions by going to the help system and looking in filter functions or filter and then into functions, and you'll see a list of all of them. This is under the numeric filter functions. All right, I'm going to click test. And we get the expression parsed successfully, so we now have Calc Bicycle Count num, and we still have T severity. Oh, I'm going to exit out of here, and let's see how that Calc Bicycle Count num works. So the job of Calc Bicycle Count num is to tell 0 if there were no bicycles and 1 if there was at least one bicycle in the collision. So let's go hit our filter here, and go back down to that same filter we were going to edit before. And this time, when I go looking for Calc Bicycle Count, I do have this one. You notice I don't have the one called num stuck in there. That's because this is a list of your actual database fields. Note that future versions of the program we're hoping to incorporate our calculated fields in here as opposed to just the database fields. But for right now, it's not there. The place to look for all of your other calculated fields is in this list here. This includes both our calculated fields and any functions that you have for the filter. So I'm going to look in here for our V user defined. There it is. And by selecting that, I now once again have a list of just the calculated fields that are in V user defined. And it looks like, look at that, we've got calc bicycle count num. I insert that. There it is. And I can say equals 1. And now when I say save and return, this one will allow me, right? Because it knows that that's now a number, and so it allows that to occur. It doesn't give me any errors. When I select OK, it now shows me all of my just bicycle crashes, all those where bicycle count was 1. Okay, this is not counting the number of bicycles. Actually, it's just a 0 or a 1 indicating yes or no for bicycles. Okay, so that's calculated fields, and we've created 2 different ones, one to sort of aggregate some fields and one to convert a field to another more readable format. A lot of ways to manipulate data in your database if it isn't stored exactly the way you would have liked it to have been stored. You don't have just the values you want. You can sort of convert them, massage them a little bit with calculated fields and make them that much easier to use. All right, well, thanks for joining me for this magic charm, and hopefully more to come soon.